So for the final topic, and it is another reoccurring, overrated, underrated. Now we already did one thanks to our buddy Todd, but I wanted to throw this out here because Jim and I kind of danced around this one, but I just wanted to kind of hit it head on. The Silent Hill series, is it overrated or is it underrated? And kind of, Jim, you tell me if I'm right or wrong in my assessment, because you and I think kind of have the same opinion. First game, it was pretty good. It was like, okay, this is a more psychological. Second game, best of the series. And, you know, it took the psychological horror to a different level. We had its main competition being Resident Evil, which early Resident Evil games, I'm not saying they were action games, but they were more action oriented than the scares you would get from the Silent Hill.
God, what a golden age too. Just to cut you off real fast, because like when Silent Hill 2 and 3 came out is when we were going through Resident Evil Remake and Zero and shit like that. So, man,
and we already had Resident Evil 1 through 3. Like that was survival horror golden age.
Yeah.
And then, you know, so after Silent Hill 3, let's just say everything else happened.
Yep.
And then, you know, I'll even throw in, and it still drives me crazy, Silent Hill PT, the goddamn demo that no one can play anymore.
Yep.
People still put that on list of best horror game ever. And granted, I will say, the experience, I didn't get to see it myself. I mean, I've watched enough reviews. I did not play it myself, but we all have probably seen it at this point. Yes, layers of fear. Most games that do that first person, you keep walking and visually things are altered. It helped inspire that style, even from a demo, but probably a lot of games had been working on it at that time. But still, people are like, that's one of the best horror games. It's like, it's not a goddamn game if you can't play it. And only like 2% of people out there even have it on an unmodified system. Like, it's just crazy. But either way, there's no doubt in the whole canon of survival horror franchises, whether you love it or hate it, Silent Hill is up there. I still think, obviously, Resident Evil is much better, and especially with the remakes weighed in, and there's talk of potentially Silent Hill coming back, but put that all aside. Do you think the series as a whole is overrated or underrated? So, Jim, I'll let you start with this one.
I'm going to have to say overall it's overrated, just because, with the exception, like, 2 is up there as one of the best horror games ever made. 3's really, really good, and 1's pretty damn good as well, though it's, you know, it's clunkier, but, you know, but after that, man, like, what was it, Downpour, which was kind of like the remake of the original one, is, like, decent, but, like, you know, 4, The Room, which really wasn't even starting as a Silent Hill game, but they just threw the label on there to make it, you know, sell more, and then all the ones after that, which are kind of a disaster, and like the weird isometric, almost beat 'em up horror one that was like the last one on the Vita in 2012, Book of Memories or some shit like that. So yeah, overall the series itself isn't that great, but its standouts are top tier. So, but overall, I guess as a series, I have to say it's overrated, just for that alone.
And strictly, I agree with Jim. But just if I play devil's advocate and I say it's underrated, the only reason I'll say underrated is because it did provide what I love, which is competition. Because otherwise, you would have had strictly Resident Evil clones. And you did see that from like D, Martian Gothic, like
Overblood,
Dino Crisis. You were seeing all these games that were starting to be like, oh, we're like Resident Evil. And here's your gun, and here's a bad guy, and shoot, shoot, bang, bang. Do puzzle, you're good. Silent Hill to me inspired games like Fatal Frame or Fear, or Fear's not as good of an example, but
or what do you call it, like
that,
Amnesia, or what do you call it?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's a good one. The Dark Descent.
And you had like Clock Tower in its own little niche too the whole time. I think Fatal Frame was kind of around the same time too. Fatal Frame's been around forever. It just never really.
Yeah, but Fatal Frame came out. Yeah, but like Fatal Frame still came out after Silent Hill. So I'm saying like the idea of you didn't need combat in order to be scary, and you could really set the mood. Resident Evil set plenty of mood, but at the end of the day, it was also scary because you were fighting. You had to be tactical with your ammo, and you could obviously fight in Silent Hill, but that really wasn't the scary point of the game. And I like that helped build that ideology into other games and inspire other games. And you could say like the imagery was even more scary than Resident Evil because Resident Evil used
way more.
Yeah, like Resident Evil used a lot of atypical, zombies, creatures, whatever. They created their own, but at the same time, it was like, okay, stuff you saw. This was a regular ass dude dealing with these crazy, horrific aberrations, whereas Resident Evil, you were a special forces person dealing with zombies and whatnot. So I think for that and setting out what it did, and obviously, it still has such a goddamn heavy fan hold that PT can get on the list, as I mentioned, as the best horror game of all time. So I think what they really need to do, take a step back, kind of like DC and Marvel movies. Like Marvel knocked it out of the books. Now DC, can you please just copy what Marvel did and do it the right way? I want Silent Hill, go back, do remakes of your games with new systems, add some more story. Ain't no shame in the game at this point.
They did do an HD remake of Silent Hill 2 and 3 last generation.
Yeah,
it was
I
like a rush job. It was like a rush job, and they just botched the shit out of it. So maybe take the original Silent Hill and maybe like what they did with Downpour, but even for this day and age, because especially for guys like us, like the stories, you're saving your missing daughter from an occult. So
yeah,
like if you want something to make us shit our little panties, like there's
Dude,
the game for us.
That moment in Silent Hill 1 when you get into that alleyway and you're like, I don't know where to go, and you turn around, those fucking nurses are and
the little baby monsters are like eating you and shit.
You're just like, what the fuck is going? Like, it's just it's creepy as shit. So I'll say underrated, but as I said, it's playing devil's advocate. So
yeah,
what I really want to hear is from you guys. Do you have an opinion on this? And this obviously will become its own segment. So really let us know. What do you guys think?
And I'll probably just put it out there that as far as straight horror goes, Silent Hill at its best is better than Resident Evil ever was. As far as just like straight up horror goes. Like I don't think, well, you know what? With the exception of Resident Evil 2 Remake, I don't, because that really had me on the edge of my seat, but like nothing really in Resident Evil ever disturbed me just as much as Silent Hill ever did at its best.
The only thing I would just argue, had I played Resident Evil 1 Remake as young as I played the original Resident Evil, that Lisa Trevor shit, that was creepy as fuck.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, like, and we talked about it before, like, even growing up when we did, like, the zombie head turning around and the dogs coming through the window. Like, that's still scarred the shit out of us. So maybe it's me also looking back, after 20-some years.
Yeah. But let us know what you think below, guys.